Okay, so Craig Curran is the Global Vice President for Customer Solutions and System Engineering at Transmit Security. Craig is a seasoned technology professional with over 20 years of industry experience in designing and architecting complex security infrastructure products and solutions. Prior to joining Transmit Security, Craig ran the worldwide field engineering team at Trusteer, acquired by IBM in 2013. Craig has also held various technical leadership positions at Citrix Systems, Zscaler, Silver Peak Systems, and Exodus Communications, where he drove innovation and execution of various solutions ranging from security, virtualization, networking, and cloud strategy. Craig also spent 4 years with America Online, playing a critical role in the build out and design of the original America Online backbone network. Impressive. Thank you for being with us, Craig.
Thanks for the intro, and wow, that makes me feel really old. Most people, especially the young ones, don't even know what America Online is. So anyway, thanks so much for having me and the introduction. Today we're going to focus on, basically passwordless authentication and, what it means to essentially deliver on the promise of going passwordless. What does passwordless actually mean? And how do we get there? Okay, so I'm going to keep this focused on the technology, but just a quick word about Transmit Security, since I think it's relative to the content that you'll see, or it's important on the background. Transmit's been around for about 7 years. Really, we focused on bringing two domains together in the identity space. One is, the identity management component, which deals with, authentication, authorization, account opening, account takeover, all of those types of things. And the second was all about the customer experience. And so, we looked at it as merging identity management with customer experience and calling it, identity experience, because that's really what it's all about now, right? It's about giving the right experience to the end user while creating the right identity model, which will allow you to, reduce fraud and, give the right levels of access and so on. And so, we've been working with the largest organizations over the last 7 years and looking at kind of fine tuning and evolving the user experience, looking at the challenges that they have and basically the user journeys as they present themselves in each of the channels. And the applications itself. And, I thought I'd kind of start off by talking all about, and we all kind of know this, in the security world as well, is that, customer experience becomes so paramount. We always walk that fine line where you've got security, right? And then you've got the customer experience and you increase one, or, one basically starts, you've got this balancing act going on. And, I thought it was relevant to, look at Jeff Bezos and kind of the fact that he's so focused on customer experience and how he sees that translating to top line revenue, right? It's his sole focus to believe in every day taking care of the customer in the right way, giving them the right experience, giving them a seamless experience, enabling them to do more in a very seamless fashion, right? And the quote on the right really is, we've done a lot of research around this, and it's the data to kind of back it up, which says that companies that earn $1 billion annually, okay, if invested properly, they can earn an additional 700 million to 1 billion within 3 years of investing in customer experience. And this goes to all of the what you see in the retail world and in other verticals with, shopping cart abandonment, site abandonment, too much friction going on, all of these things, right? This is how important user experience is becoming in the identity world as we go forward. Now, this whole concept of passwordless and what it actually means, I'll get into that. But first, let's talk a little bit about, the actual cost of passwords. We all know the bad things about passwords, right? Or, at least we've got some components or some elements that are top of mind. But really, when you start breaking down and looking at the numbers and how they interact with each other, the first is what we kind of mentioned earlier initially, which was just the revenue loss, right? That shopping cart abandonment, forcing people to go through creating passwords, remembering the passwords, coming back in, right? Approximately 1/3 of online sales across the board, and depending on the organization, it can even be higher, right, are just abandoned. We saw this with a very large retailer, which is, a customer of ours. And it was interesting, during COVID, they took away the guest checkout. Why did they do it? Because they needed more information. They needed to do more different types of marketing. They needed to establish a better user identity to know their customer. And so they took away guest checkout and they forced people to log in, and they wound up losing top line revenue because of this. They increased pain. Okay. And again, it was all due to the fact they're password based. This is directly linked to higher support volumes. Why? We forget our passwords, right? We need resets. We forget our usernames too, by the way, right? So, if you look at this, 40%, and, I'd say that's on average, depending on the company or the customer you talk to, it's even higher. But, very, very high cost in doing these support calls, support requests. And by the way, bad user experience, right? I'm calling in, it's uncomfortable for me, it's wasting my time. And then, you might even have other recovery mechanisms, which are even, as painful, if not more. And then security breaches, right? The whole concept of things like credential stuffing, dictionary attacks, all of that, but also, linked to support, people coming in and using that vector to do, account takeover, right? Coming in, impersonating somebody and saying, hey, I need my password reset. They've compromised, what your favorite pizza topping is, and so on and so forth. And so, across the board, you have security issues with passwords. So there's a cost, right? There is a revenue cost, there's a top line cost, there's a bottom line cost, there's a customer experience cost across the board with this. And this is what we're trying to solve, right? So, we touched on it earlier, but really the customer experience is what's driving innovation here. And, it's all about, people wanting very easy, but yet at the same time, secure identity experiences, right? So, obviously the things that we know are bad, right? Drop-offs, things like resets, passwords that we use constantly. The average user, by the way, has 300 online accounts and probably has 1 to 2 passwords that they use across all of them, right? So things like credential stuffing or account takeover become really, really easy. And so we want to do the opposite. We want to increase sales. We want to cut support. We want to optimize security, save millions. But guess what? We also want to make a better experience for our end user. Okay. And, the concept, as we said before, was, sacrificing the customer experience, right, for the illusion of password security. And really, we want to do both. We want to have the customer experience and we want to have better security or better identity, say it that way. We want to get closer to who the end user actually is. And we'll talk about kind of how identity and authentication are two different things. One is a subset of the other. If I authenticate, okay, I'm giving you some kind of user identifier and some kind of secret that matches it, but are you really getting a sense of my identity, right? And that's really what we're driving towards. So when we look at kind of the evolution, right, where did passwords kind of start? Where did we start doing more over passwords? And it was in the workforce, right? In the workplace, we used other things. We used like PIN cards, we used tokens, we used security keys. And why did we do that? It's because all of our crown jewels were there, right? So we said, hey, passwords are weak. We need something more. And, trying to take that methodology or that kind of, approach, scaling it to the outside world, the customer or the SIAM world, the customer identity access management world just doesn't scale, right? It's something that is very hard to do. It's very costly and it just doesn't work. And so we're looking at a new model now, and it's, authentication for everyone, utilizing what we have today on so many of our devices, on our smartphones, on our tablets, on our laptops. You've got Windows Hello, you've got Mac Touch, and so on. And we're all so comfortable with it. We do it every day to unlock our devices, 100 times a day, right? And what we don't realize behind the scenes is that it's really more secure, right? it's a more secure way in terms of just the way the authentication is handled. There's no secrets involved, right? And we'll talk more about this. And also the hardware on the device itself has evolved so much that it's now something that we should be taking advantage of and something everyone has. Okay. The other piece is, looking at doing this without requiring any dependencies, right? On another token or even on an app. I want something that I can use with what I have in my hand every day, such as my iPhone or my tablet or my machine. I don't need to have anything else. I don't even want an app. So, let's talk about what it really means to be passwordless. And many people have done this. They have a mobile first approach. They said, yeah, we've introduced biometrics, and we're doing that. I was talking to a customer that did this early on, and they're like, yeah, we rolled out Touch and Face ID in our app. And I said, okay, and when I dug under the covers and said how it's working, remember the Touch ID and the Face ID are what? They are mechanisms on the device where you can leverage a subsystem on the device, a very secure subsystem, to match the biometric and then do something in a secure way. Well, what they were doing was, once they matched that biometric, they were releasing a cached password in the keychain, all right? And the password's still flying over the wire. So is that passwordless, right? It's not. There's still a password there. There's still a password that's required. It's going over the wire, and it's required to access the actual system. So, we're talking about passwordless really being no passwords from the time you enroll, the very first time. I don't want a user store that has passwords anywhere in it. I don't want it lurking in the background. And why is this? Because you're always going to be as strong as your weakest link, right? And we all know, we talked about the fact of, why passwords are bad. And we've gone through this evolution where it's saying, oh, well, let's keep the password changing. Let's make it more complex. All you're doing is you're creating a worse user experience. You're really not, and it's a very false sense of security, okay? So we want to look at, when we say passwords, we want to look at completely removing them. And from the customers we work with and talk to, I'll say many of them have this initiative. They want to get on a roadmap in the next, 1 to 3 years to say, you know what, we want to remove all passwords. We want to get rid of them. That's our optimal state, right? MFA, so, many of us use this today. And why do we use it? It's something more than a password, but we use it, and I call this my cracked brick or my cracked foundation, principle, right? Where I've got a brick, I'm building a house, I've got a brick, it's got a crack in it, it's my password, and now I'm laying, a OTP over it, over, SMS or email. Well, that's got a crack in it too. And I've got this false sense of security saying, oh, well, it's 2 bricks, it's stronger than 1, but they can both be compromised, right? So really, we've tried augmenting passwords with doing other things. They're still flawed. They can still be compromised. And again, frustration, bad user experience, it's all hackable, right? Things like OTPs, knowledge-based questions, CAPTCHAs, and so on. We want to get to a place where it's really much more effortless. The other thing, when we talk about user experience, it's not just at the beginning and getting into the app, it's interdicting the user throughout the flow. So if I'm doing something while I'm in the app, if I'm trying to do a risky or more sensitive operation, maybe I'm trying to change my home address, or I'm trying to purchase something, or I'm trying to make a transfer of funds, something like that, right? I'm forced to actually go through these additional steps. Why? Because I'm not comfortable, because I let you in the front door with a very weak level of assurance. So I have to increase that somehow. And I'm treating everyone like a criminal, by the way. I'm giving this friction to everybody. So we really want to get used to or get closer to who the actual user is, right? Know who they are versus what they know. And in order to do that, right, how do you build this picture? Like, think of a video that's rendering, and you're combining all the pixels and you're forming a face, right? All of those pixels are made up of what? They're made up of many data points and many signals. So how do you essentially do that? How can you leverage passwordless mechanisms, but at the same time do that with the overall goal of building an identity? And building an identity is one piece of it. That's one challenge. The other challenge is how do you consume that identity? Meaning, if I come into the web channel or if I come into a specific application channel and I establish, the first part of that identity and I do a number of things, can I leverage that in other channels? Today, if I come in, for example, my bank, if I come in on the web channel, I have to go through MFA. If they've never seen that browser before, that device before, it's painful, right? I've got to get, a code on my phone. I have to do all this other stuff. Now, if I download the mobile app, guess what? I've got to go through ID proofing on that too, because they don't know my mobile device. They don't know it's me there. So, I have to continually do this. So is there a way to be able to do this across all channels? Once you're building that identity, applying it across all channels, right? And really, we're looking to getting to a place where we can be much more intelligent with how we, authenticate the user within the construct of their identity. So, how are things evolving? And we're seeing this, and I think these numbers are even dated, right? They're actually even larger now, but the demand is growing. All of the new devices now are coming standard with biometric sensors on board. You've got Windows Hello, you've got Mac Touch, you've got, of course, on the iPhone, Touch ID, Face ID, Samsung devices, Android has it, right? It's you'd be hard pressed to go find a smartphone, go buy a new smartphone that doesn't have these things on it today, right? And, here are some numbers that kind of prove it. The 86% consumer stat, I like that because this kind of came from Visa. And it was, this is, when they did their research, that was the number. And this is probably 6 months old, if not more. 86% of their consumers would rather use biometrics or more interested in using biometrics than other forms of logging in. So, enter FIDO, right? And I'm going to skip, what FIDO is. You guys probably know that, or at least at a high level, but, it is an open industry, association, and it's trying to drive a standard for more secure way of authenticating, right? Now, what's relevant about it with FIDO 2 is a series of things, right? First of all, it's focused on protecting the user's privacy. It does provide strong MFA in the way that it works, and it is passwordless. That's the whole point of it. It uses asymmetric cryptography, or PKI. So that example I gave before about the iPhone, just using that biometric to go ahead and, release a cached password, that's not the way a FIDO interface works. FIDO interface works with generation of keys. There's a private key on the device that never leaves, and it's stored securely in secure hardware now on all the devices. And that key is used to sign the assertion that happens on the device through the biometric, and that signature is validated on the other side by the public key. So no secrets travel over the wire at all, and the biometric or that key that's generated never leaves the device. Okay, very, very secure from that perspective. Okay, so because there's no secrets flying over the wire, all of these types of attacks are thwarted, right? Brute force, password spraying, phishing, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll talk, there's some unique stuff now that, or some stuff that's inherent in the way that FIDO 2 is realized through things like WebAuthn, where even things like phishing, redirecting to other domains, things like that are just not possible anymore. Okay, so we know that this is the way to go. We said the first bullet already that the private key never leaves the device. WebAuthn makes this all possible, and the recent acceptance of this, right? So if you guys don't know what it is, WebAuthn is an interface that gets exposed that can be leveraged, and it's now accepted by all browsers, all major browsers. So Chrome, Safari, Internet Explorer, Firefox, all support it. And so does Apple and Windows natively have the interface for it. So what does that mean? It means that I can use it across all those ecosystems to actually engage and use the FIDO protocol and the biometrics on board. WebAuthn is a standard. It gets exposed. I can use it the right way, okay? And it allows me the capability to actually use that across all the devices. Very powerful, okay? And it leverages all of the native security elements, the biometrics, and so on. So that was big, right? And the fact that Apple used to have their own unique way, but ever since iOS 14.5, now they exposed it in the generic WebAuthn sense, and across the board now, you have it across all the devices. Now that's great, it's available, but it does have challenges in trying to implement it on your own. We see this a lot when many of our customers say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go try to do that on my own, right? So they are still complex to implement, right? There's a FIDO infrastructure on the back end that you have to do key management. You have to understand or, think about the whole concept of registration. You have to, think about the concept of, user, how do you drive the adoption? How do you drive the device management? How do you drive the key management? When users lose a device, when they want to replace a device, when they want to add a device, how do you handle all of those things, right? So it's more than just authentication, it's enrollment, recovery, it's usability across all devices and channels. So one interesting thing you may or may not know is that FIDO2 and WebAuthn is specific to the user, obviously. It's specific to the device, it's specific to the browser, and it's specific to the domain. So what does that mean? That means if I'm an organization and I have app1.mysite.com and I decide to use WebAuthn for that web application, and I enroll your FIDO authenticators, those keys will be registered for app1.mysite.com. Now, if I have app2, guess what? I have to register you again. Those keys are specific to that domain. Or if I open another browser, register again, right? So there's this portability challenge in that it's not portable. So you've got server-side capabilities you need to realize, you've got the user management stuff, you've got the device management stuff, you've got the domain-specific stuff you still have to manage and think about. And then, when you have multiple devices like all of us do today, I have like 5, right? How do you manage that, right? So these are the things a lot of people are saying, yeah, we'd love to take advantage of it, but these are the challenges we're currently having today, okay? So really, what does that mean? Like, how do you take FIDO and really map it to identity? And what does it take to go passwordless using this mechanism that's now available to me, right? And these are some questions kind of extrapolated from the last slide that, I usually prompt people with, like, ask yourself this, right? Your enrollment, your re-enrollment processes. What about the multi-device problem? How do I deliver it across all my channels? Remember, I mentioned earlier about if I register and me in one channel, is there a way I can leverage that in some, with some kind of implementation in other channels or other applications? How about using it in non-digital channels, like a call center, or even a branch or a kiosk type scenario, right? And then, the big thing is, how do I get my end users there? Okay. So the first thing, we want to think about when we go passwordless, and assuming we want to take advantage of FIDO and biometrics, is, registration, or I call it linking, right? How do I link or, allow a user to register the biometric itself? Well, the wrong way is to use a password. Why? Because your chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So if I'm going to offer you a new experience and I say, hey, Craig, you logged in, would you like to use your biometric? Like you've seen in so many mobile apps, right? Hey, log in using your biometric from now on. Well, I logged in with my password. Now you're letting me use a biometric. So guess what? If it wasn't me and my password was hacked, now you just let that person enroll their biometric. It's only as strong as password. So that's the wrong way to do it. The right way to do it is that one-time enrollment should be friction-filled. That's where you want to anchor your identity. That's where you want to do your KYC processes, right? You want to build a very high degree of assurance. And there might be multiple ways different organizations do it differently. There could be identity services that are called from the back end. I've seen everything from government ID scanning to do different types of external information validation, multiple kind of factors. The point is that if you do it correctly, this should only have to be done one time to link that biometric, okay? And then really, you know, we want to get to a place where if you can do that the very first time, let's be able to do that without an actual application, right? You could say, well, you know, part of what I'm doing is I've got, you know, strong device ID because I'm installing an app, and that app has some kind of hook on the device. Well, again, we said, look, let's remove the dependency of an app. Not everyone wants to download an app or can download an app. So, you know, let's do all of that with not requiring an app either. Once you've done that, if done properly, the idea is now you've increased the level of assurance that you have when you enter the next time and many times after that. So if you've enrolled properly, now I'm coming in with a FIDO-based biometric, right? By definition, it's MFA. It's something I have, which is the device, right? And it's something I am, which is my biometric. So, you know, there's no need to repeatedly challenge the user. You're coming in with a higher degree of assurance. So do I need to step you up for everything? No, maybe just those very sensitive things I may want to as an organization, or I might not. So you're cutting the interdiction rate. Not only are you letting people log in a much smoother way that they're used to doing when they just unlock their phone, but you're also allowing them a better user experience as they flow through the journey, okay? Feels welcoming, feels easier. Guess what? They stay longer. They're able to check out much easier. You're able to get, you know, a lot of identity information. The retailer I talked about said, look, if we do this properly, we can allow such a seamless checkout process that, you know, users don't have to really do much, and we still know who they are, what they're buying, and we can allow them to transact securely. Okay. Now, imagine taking that and being able to use that in a call center type environment, a non-digital call center environment. So today, you know, most organizations we work with have so many tools. They have voice recognition systems, they have voice signaling systems, they have other tools, and they're trying to orchestrate, right? What's that mean? Well, they're trying to look across all those signals and tools to determine red, yellow, green at the time the caller comes in. It's very hard to do, right? And it ends up being a bad experience for the customer. You wind up just saying, hey, this is the policy for everybody. You're gonna, you know, give them this type of challenge. You're gonna ask them these 3 questions and put them through the ringer, right? If you were able to let the call center leverage the FIDO device that was already registered, that mobile device, that biometric on the device, whatever it might be, you're actually circumventing the need, or you're preventing the need to actually do orchestration. Why? The minute they come in, if you've implemented correctly, they're coming in with a higher degree of assurance. So do you need to look across all those things? Probably not, right? So you've reduced your call handle time, you've given a better user experience, and you're actually building on that identity model, right? So imagine you see Craig now in the web channel, you see him in the mobile channel, you're seeing him in the call center. All of those channels are able to basically add to an identity model. I know what Craig is doing in the way that I've implemented authentication, if I've done it correctly, across all those channels. And I can understand different data elements about him. I know that in the mobile channel, he uses this device 305 times. I know that he accesses from these locations. I know he accesses at these times. Those are all the elements that you want to start to look at in building your identity model. And then if you can consume that in the call center and say, hey, this is Craig, he just came in, he authenticated, and you're doing this in the back end, and you're feeding a green signal to the call center agent because you just saw that this is the same device Craig uses 700 times in the mobile channel, and he just came in with it to the call center, right? There's a high degree of assurance there, right? So this is a challenge, and it's hard for people to realize. I mean, even using the FIDO standard, it's very hard to realize this if you're trying to do things on your own. Now, in terms of paving the way, obviously these are mechanisms that are available now. And a lot of the time it's all about getting users to generally accept, right? If you're doing things in a suboptimal or a poor way in the past, it's still something you're used to. And now you're providing something smoother, you're providing something different. And so you really need to give them a nice path, right? provide them phasing, provide them options, provide them, prompts. Hey, would you like to do this? Are you registration? Would you like to register in this way and log in this way from now on? And then once it's done, let them know that they've securely authenticated. Give them that, right? So, we follow this quite a lot with customers that are moving to this model, which is, educate, motivate, incentivize, and then offer support. Educate, it's all about, helping people understand why this is better and getting them to a place where they're comfortable with it. Motivating, a lot of times, I'll do that next time, right? Well, you want to get people there. So what we're seeing a lot of organizations do is they're saying, okay, we're going to either limit functionality or go the incent route, right? Which is add functionality if you come in with that stronger form of authentication, like adding functionality without interdicting again, just let them do things, right? And then, offering support. And this is different, right? In terms of how you want to offer support, in terms of your cost model, do you want to offer online support or other channels? But really, I think if you do the first three, it's something that, if done properly, it can be done in the app channel and get people to kind of follow in an easy way. The perception, right? This is the other thing. So again, this falls into kind of the education bucket and getting people used to the new norm, right? A lot of folks say, well, okay, I just came in nicely, but hey, you used to interdict me every time I made a transfer. Now you don't do that anymore. Wow, I don't feel safe, right? And it's this false sense of security. So letting them know with those splash screens, letting them know with that education process, hey, you've already been authenticated in a strong manner. So now, we're allowing you to make this transfer up to $100,000 or $10,000 or whatever it might be, right? So it's all about that communication, the education all the way through, getting users kind of phased into the new mechanism, right? And again, it's all based upon, FIDO done properly, where it's standards based. You're not doing anything proprietary, right? Obviously, it's stronger by way of security, leveraging the device, leveraging the secure hardware on the device, the biometrics as well, and then privacy, right? You can't track users across applications, which is becoming so big now. So, I just wanted to show you kind of, this is our product, but in no means do I want this to be a sales pitch for the company. How I wanted to show it to you is what's possible if it's done properly. And I'm going to show you 3 different channels, okay? So we have a product called Find ID. It's sold as a service, and it's engaged through standard protocols. But if done properly, this is what your login experience could look like. And this is in a desktop channel. So if I'm coming in from my desktop, okay, I could come in and basically click the login button. I get a biometric prompt, okay? This is on a Mac. I authenticate with my Touch ID and I'm in. I didn't even put a username in. It's not only passwordless, it's usernameless, okay? So this is where people are trying to get to, and it's possible, okay, if done properly. Similarly,
how long?
Go ahead.
I mean, that sounds good, but one of the big things that you were saying is the onboarding experience. So what pieces of contact do you need for a business that may be viewing this video to do this?
Yeah, so there's that. So what I'm showing you is a customer experience that's already linked, as we call it, right? So there's that one-time linking process where, in the way that our product works, we're essentially creating a secure way to identify the user, an opaque identity, if you will. And the organization that's using our product does that initial linking to the persona. So during that registration period, let's just say that you engage the service and it tells you, hey, the ID is 12345, okay? You'll run that registration process, whatever you're comfortable with for your organization. Maybe it's enter the last 4 of your account number and do this, and do this, do this, right? And once I've done all that, you say, oh, this is Craig. And then in your user data store, you can associate Craig with another attribute, 12345. And so as I just came in on the web, I used my device that I enrolled with, and you engaged our service. We gave you back 12345. You looked it up and said, oh, that's Craig, he's in. Okay, so that now was the way that you allowed me to log in, and I didn't have to remember a username. I just used a biometric, fully secure, FIDO-based. We actually recognize that the machine is registered. We recognize that it's biometric capable. We take care of all of that. We take care of all the key management, right? These are all things that you'd have to do. But that's what you actually saw is the day 2 experience after that user was linked. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. So similar on the mobile, it's super cool as well. I just log in and boom, you know, I use my Face ID and I get in straight away. So very similar, you know, type experience. Something went funny with the video here, but you know, I just click the login button. I get the Face ID prompt, and it's supposed to go to the account screen, and my video's not playing nice with me, but it's the exact same idea. So whether I registered in the desktop channel, if I use this device and made it available in the mobile channel, because I'm leveraging the same service, it's returning back that same value, and you know who I am. Okay. And then lastly, you know, one that I think is very cool is the call center. So I'll turn up my speaker for this one. And this is what we call a CIBA flow, right? Client initiated backend authentication, where your call center software can actually engage the service. And as I'm coming in, you can do a number of things to initially look me up, right? You can take my phone number, you can take some initial information, but the point is that the way you're validating me is you're making use of that same FIDO channel or the FIDO
Thank you for
authenticators.
calling Acme Support.
There you go.
To authenticate, please open the text link we just sent you.
So you're getting a text link and you're clicking on the text link.
Hello, Marissa. Authentication complete.
It drives the FIDO authenticator on that device, and now you're enrolled. The call center agent gets a nice green signal and off you go. It's as simple as that. Okay, so register one time, use it across all these channels. And you know what you've been seeing is the whole authentication process, and that's wonderful. But we thought about, you know, what we've been saying all along is building the identity. So, you know, this is what you need to start looking at, additional signals. And this is just an example of, you know, what our service does. This is just a very small excerpt. We actually give a lot more than this. But in that standard way you engage the service, we're giving you all this information about that specific opaque identifier. We don't know who the user is. In this case, we validated an email and a phone number as well, and that's optional. But we can tell you from a network perspective how many times this device has been used across all of the providers that subscribe to the service, right? What's the frequency? What's the recency? Total providers that confirm the user, 3. So, you know, this could be, you know, Home Depot or Citibank or whatever, right? But you've seen that other providers are utilizing, and this user has been successfully authenticated across all of these, right? And, you know, total devices for this user. So, you know, that portability concept I talked about, where you can use it across channels. As a user, imagine if you could let me build a portfolio of FIDO authenticators across my devices, and then you let me use those recognizing who I am with any application, right? So you've got N number of devices, you've got N number of channels, and imagine if you could bring that all together and give me the flexibility, whether I don't have my iPhone because I'm lying in bed, I've got my iPad, but I don't need to get up and go to my iPhone to get the OTP that was sent to me. I just use the iPad, right? So, you know, these are some of the things that, you know, we're talking about when we say, you know, going passwordless. What does it really mean? Yes, it's leveraging standards like FIDO. They're available now. Wonderful. The secure hardware, the biometrics are all on the devices. Let's leverage those. But it's really more than authenticating. It's allowing for no passwords from the very start of the relationship, from the registration all the way through. You never register a password ever again. And you're really building an identity versus just adding yet another authenticator. That's what it's really all about. And so, you know, what we're seeing is, you know, this is what we've been focused on from the very beginning. And we've just seen it, you know, transpire. I mean, look, I don't know if you guys know this, but passwords were first created, like, I think in the 1960s. In fact, the guy that created them recently passed away. And, you know, it's very old technology, right? So people are moving away from this. And the question is, you know, how are you going to evolve to that? What are you going to do as an organization in order to offer better user experiences and, you know, increase what you're available to do in the online channels? Okay, so that's what I had for you today. I'm going to stop there. Happy to answer questions and take it from there.
Great. So just a quick announcement that I'm going to stop the recording. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it's another reason to join our meetings in person, so you could be involved in the Q&A. Thank you very much, Craig.
Great. Thanks, everyone.